Okay, so we're in Hilchas Niddah, Siman Kuf Tzaddik Gimel. It's just one seif, an important seif, because this applies to every chas and kala. This is a little bit different than the typical halachas that apply to a Niddah, because this is pretty much a one-time event. But even though I say a one-time event, this one time can become an extended one time. As you will soon see, things are not always as smooth as we would like them to be on the night of the chasana. Chas and kala are going to be with each other for the first time and need to be aware of certain things. And I'm assuming, we're talking about frum people, they're not experienced. So they're not knowledgeable, they're not aware of certain things. They may have hopefully received proper hadracha, proper guidance, not only about halacha, but about general basics of anatomy or biology. And even though they may know certain things, things do not always work out the way they were told, and it's not always the way we expected. So there's certain important halachas that apply to that night, and they concern dam besulim, the blood that comes from the hymen, from the breaking or the breakage of the hymen. This dam is not dam niddah. It's not unclean blood. This, if anything, resembles a dam makkah. It's a sort of bruise. And a dam makkah, we know, is not metamif. We know for sure it's the dam that's coming from the makkah. Nonetheless, as we will soon see, for some reason, this dam besulim that is going to break, if it's going to be there, and even if it's not exactly there, is going to be treated, for the most part, like dam niddah. In other words, as you probably know, chas and kala, if everything went as planned, then after the first night they cannot be together for a total of approximately 11 days, 4 plus 7, 4 days before she begins to count her Shiva Nikiyim, 7 clean days. Very similar to the halacha of a Niddah. You know, one of the differences, there's a few, is that she doesn't have to wait 5 plus 7, according to that opinion that says you have to first wait 5 days, or until the blood is over, which regular period it could be 4 or 5 days, and then she begins the Shiva Nakim. But with a kala, with dam besulim, usually all it is 4 plus 7. But the question is going to be, of course, well, what happens if she did not see any blood?
Why make her wait anyway if she sees?
What is that?
Why make them wait?
That's what we're going to be talking about. Okay. Yeah, that's partially what we're going to be talking about. What's the halacha for here? You know, if this is all it is dam besulim. On the contrary, if anything, we should be toile on the makkah. You know, we are toile on the makkah. Mm-hmm. If we know for sure it's a makkah, or that she has a makkah, we can be toile. I mean, why would this be any different? So that's part of what we're going to be reviewing now, is what exactly is dam besulim, and why does she have to wait? What halachas apply? All we know is the halacha today, pretty much across the board, is that under certain circumstances they're not going to be yichud exactly. In other words, they can be in the same room, but not going to be intimately involved as husband and wife after the first night. So what exactly is going on? So what's interesting here is that if you look at the Mishnah, and also partially the Gemara, you get a different halacha. Not only do you get a different halacha, you actually get various halachas, because you have a big machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai as to how much time does a kala get to assume that the dam that she's seeing during intimacy is dam besulim and not dam niddah. In other words, it could potentially be that chassan and kala are together, there's dam noticeable on the sheet, or she sees it, or whatever, or he sees it, and this repeats itself the next night, the third night. Now, one can be very easily concerned if this happens a year from now, a year after the chasna or two, because we are familiar already by now with dam machmas tashmish. Remember that concept? That could pose a big problem if a woman sees dam while she's intimate. I mean, how is she going to have a relationship if there's always going to be dam during that time? So that could pose a problem. That is a possibility, even though it's not very, very common. It could pose a problem. And we have to be able to let's ascertain where it's coming from before we make it difficult for her, and for them actually, for the couple. If you remember, that was way back in the beginning, when we discussed the various possibilities of what it could be and what to do about it. But Dam Besulim is different because it's just a fact of nature that there is something called Dam Besulim. But, as we've seen not too long ago, there's also something called Dam Chibud. Dam, coming from the uterus, could come as a result not necessarily of the period, the regular period, but it could also be because of chibud, the desire. We've seen examples of fear, we've seen example of jumping around, which can bring on the period perhaps earlier, can bring on a kesem, a stain. There are various things that can bring about dam, unclean dam. But this dam besulim is okay. But still, even though it's okay, there's certain halachas that apply. But before we see the halachas, just a little bit of background is important. From the Mishnah, there appears to be a machlekes legabe, what they call be'ilas mitzvah. So if you ever see that term be'ilat mitzvah, that's the term associated with the first time chassan and kala are with each other. It's a very special connection. It's the first time that he makes her into a keli. Assuming that she's a basula, if she's not a widow or a divorcee, that is what really consummates the marriage, as they would call it in English. Even though the chuppah is, of course, something substantial, the chida yichud could be something important too, right? But the bia itself is very significant. Even though she's an Ashes Ish from the time he put the ring on her finger and said, Ariad Mekudesh, still, this is a very important part of the process. And as we know, this of course will eventually lead, hopefully, Yiras Hashem, to children. So it's a mitzvah of prurvu. There's other explanation as to why this is called a be'ilas mitzvah. I mean, every time husband is with his wife, there's a mitzvah of oina too. But the be'ilas mitzvah, this is pretty much what consummates the marriage. This is part of the mitzvah. And it could very possibly be, depending on her age, the age of the kala, that there may or may not be blood. But let's assume things are normal. Let's assume that this is a regular girl, and she has besulim, and when the besulim break, there will be blood. Okay. So there's a machlokes between Beishamai and Beis Hillel as to how long can this go on. Why? Because it is possible, first of all, that the husband did not do a complete job the first time around. It could be that he even did not do anything. He thinks he did. He doesn't even know what he did. And what does she say? Well, all she knows is she was in pain. Something was going on. So there could have been blood. So if there's blood, perhaps that's it. There's not going to be any more blood later on. No. If it's ratzuf, in other words, if we have various, I guess you can call them bias in Hebrew, or intimate connections over the next couple of times, and they're consecutive, where there is blood, then they can all be related to the besulim. And why is that important? Well, because the halachas of dam besulim is different than dam niddah, at least by 1 day. That she's tmeya, we're going to say yes. Is she really tmeya? No, because it's not dam niddas. But as far as the halacha is concerned, if we can ascertain from what we see and what we hear that this is possibly still dam besulim, then we're going to treat it as such. What this means, obviously, is that if in between there was a regular bia and there was no dam at all, guess what? The besulim are gone. And if she does happen to have dam again in the future during tashmish, then that could be a problem. Then she has to consult with the rabbi. Now what? It's most likely not dam besulim. So what's the machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beishamai? It all depends if she's a ketana, if she's a na'ara, if she's a boigeres. As you know, there's various stages for girls and for boys too. A girl under 12, a girl who's already 12, a girl who's above 12. The older the girl, there is always this chance that the blood will not come. She will not notice any blood. And if there was some blood, it's very, very minute. It could have easily been covered up by the zera, as the Chachamim explained. And if she's a real ketana, it could be that she never saw blood at all. So if she never saw blood at all, then we're never going to have a suffix. We're not going to really have a suffix if this is dam niddah or not. In other words, there's less of a suffix with a little girl than there is with an older girl. With an older girl, you can claim, okay, maybe there's some dam niddah involved here. That is what we're going to be machmer. And we're going to soon see the reasons of why we're a machmer. Partially has to do with because we're concerned. Maybe in this dam besulim there's also dam chimud, as an example, dam niddah. But with the ketana, that's especially a ketana that never saw dam, it never had her period yet, then it would be less of an issue. And if you look at the Mishnah, you will see that with the young girl that never saw dam, Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai both give her a chance that it could be that the makkah from the besulim, the bruise, has not healed yet, and it could be that she's seeing for several consecutive times dam besulim. So if she's still a tinoikes, a little girl who has not had her period, and she's getting married, she could be given up to 4 nights. 4 nights, meaning 4 times of being together with her husband. Or, according to Beis Hillel, until the makkah is healed. And I'm going to get back to that. How do we know when the makkah is healed? But in the first category of tinoikes, in other words, the youngest girl hasn't seen her period yet, we're being lenient, according to the halacha in the Mishnah, not according to the halacha today, that it's possible that she will continue to see dam besulim either for 4 times, according to Beis Shammai, or according to Beis Hillel, ad shetichya makkah, until she will heal.
So you're saying 4 times?
Together, 4 events.
But the 4 events could come much shorter than 4 nights.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's correct.
We're doing 4 events, not 4 nights.
Yeah, but
what kind of events?
Yeah, but usually we say
I'm just
intimacy. We're talking.
These are acts of intimacy.
Yeah.
During the 4 days in between, they're not allowed to be intimate.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's very good. So it's really 4 nights or 4 times, whenever those times come about.
So it would be a minimum of 16 days.
Well, not necessarily, because remember, in the time of the Gemara, the halachas were slightly different.
So it wasn't 4 days.
Yeah. So let's just consider it 4 times, regardless of whether you have to, how much you have to wait. Regardless, let's just say 4 times. We would still say, as long as they're consecutive, it's all dam besulim, according to Beis Shammai. According to Beis Hillel, until the makkah heals, she's a tinoikes. She hasn't seen her period yet. All right. Now, what if she's a nara? She's a little older, but she hasn't seen her period yet, and she's getting married. In the case of if it's time for her to see the period, but she hasn't seen yet, you give her, according to Beis Shammai, only the first night, or according to Beis Hillel, until Motzei Shabbos, 4 nights. The reason it says that Motzei Shabbos is because there was a custom then of getting married on Tuesday night, Wednesday. All right, so it would come out 4 nights. Now, if she had already seen blood in her father's home, in other words, in her parents' home, then the opinion of Beis Shammai will be, you give her just the Be'ilas mitzvah itself, the one time. According to Beis Hillel, you would give her Kol HaLayla, the entire night. The entire night belongs to her, in other words, even though it was more than once. This is Medin HaMishneh, of how they treated this. In other words, there was always the potential that it could be that the besulim are still there, or do we wait a few nights, or do we wait until the makkah heals? So depending on her age, that is how we would go about it. How would we know if the makkah healed? Well, there's several ways you can tell. For example, if she sees dam when she stands up, but she doesn't see dam when she sits down, or when she sits down on a hard surface, that's when she sees, but not when she sits down on a pillow. These are examples of we know that the makkah has not healed. We're seeing a pattern here that something is causing her to bleed if she is in a certain position. Whereas if she always sees, regardless of her position, or never sees, then we know that most likely the makkah healed. And why is she seeing the blood all this time, no matter what position she is? Because that's dam niddah. And if she would see b'shas tashmish, then it could be also machmas makkah. And if b'shas tashmish she did not see at all, and not b'shas tashmish she did see, then obviously it's dam niddah. Because if it would still be dam besulim, she would have for sure seen b'shas tashmish too. So these are some of the ways that they would be able to tell. I mean, today medically, and you can also check it out. Which leads us to the next point. What happens if the doctor is the one that removes the besulim? Okay? What then? So maybe we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. In other words, there can be a situation where sometimes there's a need for a doctor to remove it, and it's not done the natural way. Okay, we'll come to that. If you look at the Gemara, you look at the Rishonim, the Halacha is, Rav and Shmuel, they both agree that the Chassan boyel be'ilas mitzvah ufoiresh. All of a sudden you see that the Halacha is not based on what Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai were discussing, that it depends on her age, depends if she already saw her period or not. He's with his Kala, and he's poirish. After that one time, that one night, but one time, he's poirish as though she's a Niddah for 11 days, for the next 11 days. So on this, there's a machlokes rishonim. The Rashba, and as we're going to see it inside in the Mechaber, pretty much the shita that we follow, that the poirish miyad, that his husband can no longer be on the same bed. He has to be poirish as though his wife is a nida. This applies even b'ktana shelo igia zmana, even a little girl who has not seen her period yet. Even though dam besulim is like a makkah, I mean, there's no bigger makkah than this, and you could be easily toilet on this. Why do we answer? Not everybody. One explanation given is not everybody's a baki to know the difference between a ktana and a gdoila, between whether she really did see or did she not see. Maybe she didn't pay attention, but she really did in fact see. In other words, it's not that we're choshesh that necessarily that this is dam nida, what she's seeing now. It's just that we're machmer, even though ordinarily by makas we wouldn't be machmer. Why are we more machmer here? It's not only, some say it's not only because of what I just said. That some people may not know the difference. Some people may not be able to distinguish. By dam makkah, could you imagine if she has a makkah? I mean, this could pose a problem to their relationship if the makkah is there for a while. This is temporary. The dam besulim, the whole besulim thing is going to go away. The next month it won't be there, hopefully. They were therefore more machmir here than with other makkahs, because otherwise, why not treat this like any other makkah? We're mekel by makkahs. We attribute sometimes a dam to a makkah, so you can be easily lenient, and this is a big makkah. Still, one explanation is because people are not able to be mafchin, then they can not make a distinction between if there was dam or not dam, if she's a gdoiler or ktan and so forth. Not necessarily because this is dam, because we're choshesh that this is dam nida. But
between what and what?
Between Ketana, Gdoila, between the stages that we said in Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai.
But all these distinctions will only be relevant once we presume that, or once we want to assign this to the stages of a Damnida. Or at least,
well, obviously.
Certain.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm going to come to that why are we machmir to begin with, that this is like that. I'm going to come to that in a second.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's one explanation. Rambam, if you look at the Rambam, it's mashma from here, from his words, that me'ikar adin at least, there is a difference. He's mechalik that if she already had her period in her parents' home, that's when you say the halacha of poirish miyad. But if it's a little girl who has not had her period, the words of the Mishnah will still apply to her. In other words, the halacha of the Mishnah, B'sila, B'sham, whatever, would apply still to a girl who has not had her period yet. So the halacha of poirish miyad is only applicable if you're talking about a girl who's already had her period and so forth. Now, it looks like the way the Poiskin explained the Rambam, that even he is masking that's the halacha. The question is it Medina or is it a minhag? That's all. But the consensus for the most part is, that is the halacha today. We don't make any distinctions on what her age is or what her status is, did she have her period or not. But in the Rosh, it also brings down that perhaps there's a chashash here that some dam nida got mixed in to the dam besulim, and because of that chashash, that they were machmir. When did this start, this chumrah? That's a very interesting question, because it doesn't appear in the Mishnah for sure. We don't see it's such a chumrah. Later on in the Gemara, it's mentioned somehow that's poirish miyad. But as of when did this halacha begin that you treat dam besulim like she would be a nida, pretty much, and even though she's not, it's a chumrah in a sense. So I saw different opinions. Some say that it actually was never the halacha until the period of the Amoraim. Sometime the late period of the Amoraim, that is when this halacha, when this halacha was instituted. Some say that it was in the time of Reb Zera. Remember we learned about Reb Zera, about the Bnei Yisrael accepted upon himself, took upon himself certain chumras. This too came about during that time when all these chumras came about. So this one too. Others say that this really only began to be the norm during the period of the Geonim, which is about a little over 1,000 years ago. But before that, you didn't have this. This chumras.
Radical change.
Yeah, they accepted upon themselves that a kala, she sees blood, even though we know where that blood is most likely coming from, we treat it just this time, hopefully, as dam besulim. As dam niddah. In other words, we treat it the same as dam niddah.
This kind of major interruption in family relationships.
Yeah.
You would think that there had to be some major, some big issue that arose, that they would start to take on this humor and that everybody would.
Yeah.
There should be some source of some horrible thing happening. And all of a sudden it took on some of this.
Well, obviously there were always certain spakas, certain doubts, certain issues that arose. They didn't just sit down and say, let's make a new chumrah.
No.
You're right. Yeah.
You have made the point many times in this show.
Right.
That a Rav has to be very careful.
Right.
Not to interrupt family relationships.
That's correct. Very true.
Because, among other things, we want to have.
That's correct.
This is a major interruption.
Very good point. What do you say to that, Ilan?
Well,
Did you hear his point?
I was asking all along, why did they do that? So I would think that answering my question would answer his
Right, there's something had to happen.
No, but you hear his kvetch.
I understand, yeah.
There's a little kvetch here too. Children. Yeah.
We're doing the little children. We're doing.
How could we? We don't want to interrupt that. Sure. And what's the answer to that? Usually, a woman cannot become pregnant for the first time. Anyway, as the besulim are being broken, a woman does not conceive during that particular time. Yeah.
I have a problem with it.
Would you word it differently?
I'll tell you why. And then you swing around.
Well, you might tell me, well, there was one rabbi in the town of the Gemara that knew how to get a woman pregnant for the first time around.
No, not at all. He's concerned about the delay for the second bia. And the one that won't make her pregnant is the first one she just had.
Right.
But we're preventing her from having the second bia. And the fact that the first one will not bring about children doesn't answer the question why we delay the second bia, which would.
We're waiting 11 days.
Yeah. All right. He's right. We're
waiting 11 days, and we're taking away most of the time that we would normally think that she would get pregnant.
Yeah.
We're taking away that first month.
Yeah. No, not necessarily. Remember, you have to remember, to become pregnant is not granted that it's going to happen. Now, why not? Why not? Because a woman can only become pregnant approximately 3 days out of the month.
But we're taking 11 days out of the month. When she might have had Melicha, and it might be that those 3 days would be part of that 11.
So let me tell you. What happens in real life, depending on when the date of their wedding is, it could be that the kala will become a niddah as a result of the dam besulim, if everything went normal. And then, a couple of days later, she's a real niddah because of the onset of her period. So, in reality, she's not waiting double the amount of time. We try to avoid that. We try to avoid that not only because of the mitzvah, like you were saying, but also because imagine if she waited 11 days, and after the 11 days she's ready to go to the mikveh, boom, she gets her period, another 12 days. That we try to avoid. In other words, for that, you got to use common sense and pick a date that this should not happen. That it should be close enough to her period anyway. See what I mean? Yeah. Because of that, you're right. Yeah.
Probably more experience with people. I
don't know.
Do people really take this into account when they set the date?
Yes. Sure. A lot of things are taken into account, including when the guests can come. And a lot of things are taken into consideration. One of the most important things that are taken into consideration for a kala or the wedding night is she should not get her period that night. That you have to try to avoid at all costs, because it can complicate matters. It's not, in other words, it's not the end of the world, but it can complicate matters, especially if you have a mitzvah tanz, if you know what I mean. Chassan, Kala, the ring, the handing in the ring, it complicates matters. I mean, there's some clear halachas how to handle this situation. It can be done properly without anybody ever figuring out what happened. Which, of course, you don't want to let everybody know. Right. But there's halachas of what to do, what happens if, And we spoke a little bit about that, right? In the last Siman, of what happens if a Kala is a Niddah on the night of a chuppah. So the first thing they do is to try to make sure that doesn't happen. And how do you do that? Well, if she's a girl that has a Veset Kavua, pretty much Kavua, she's a lucky girl. She's expecting on this day, give or take a day, give or take 2 days. That's easy. Could it still happen that she'll get it because of her excitement on the day of the chuppah? Yes, it could. But usually not. You're taking a chance. And you know what? Even though today I hear it's the minority of girls that can do that, I've heard that I don't know if the majority, but many, many girls take pills to regulate their period or to prevent it from happening on that night. So that's what the function of certain pills does. It somehow regulates or withholds or postpones, delays. And if she takes it enough time before her chasana, then she shouldn't be worried about it. Especially for girls who have an irregular period, that's the only solution. And it's advisable, actually, for them to do that. So they shouldn't get into complications. But once we know approximately when she will expect it, we can time, and we should time the chasana in such a way that it shouldn't be that she has 11 days of separation from her chasan, and then boom, after the mikveh, or maybe she doesn't even have any chance to go to the mikveh, she's already getting her period. So we try to avoid that too. At least she has a couple days afterwards, and then she might get her period. So even though, yes, you're right, we're trying not to put them apart, there's obviously a reason here to be machmir, that the Chachamim felt was necessary, because either the lack of the kiyas, being able to be mashkin, distinguish, there can be some dam of Niddah. And why didn't she see it? Ki chipahu zera. In other words, it could be the Siman covered up the little bit of blood that she really didn't see it, but there was some dam there. And, it could be the dam besulim was really there, or some other dam. Yeah. The dam Niddah that we're concerned, it could be that sometimes with the dam besulim can come other dam too. That's, again, I don't know how frequent this could happen, but there's, I guess, a possibility, and that's why they were choshesh for that. Anyway, so the halacha is that even though today the din of nar and katana is not so shayach, why is it not so shayach? Because most girls that get married are called boigros or bogeres, which means that they already had their periods and they've already seen blood. And there is a shita, Rabbeinu Hanana holds that, once a girl is older, she just may not have dam besulim. Still, even though that's his shita, there are girls that have dam besulim, and because of that, loy plug. We don't say, well, if she doesn't have blood, we'll treat her as not having blood. We just loy plug, which the halacha is we treat everybody alike, and since some boy girls do have blood, we treat all the boy girls as though they're nidas.
Who did you say? Said that
Rabbeinu Hanano. Rabbeinu Hanano says that for the most part, a bogeres very likely that she will not see blood. And you know what? To some extent, he's right. A lot of girls, older ones especially, don't see blood. We're talking about besulim, right? They're besulis. Now what happens if she went horseback riding once? What happened if she, because of gymnastics or something, she lost her besulim? Which leads us to the question I brought up before. What happens if a doctor takes it out? So there's no besulim. And now there's going to be a biori shoina, a first-time event. Majority of poskim say it's okay, she's muteris. Unless, of course, she sees blood. In other words, if there's no blood, the besulim have been removed. Well, Moshe Feinstein also says it's okay. Now, if we know for sure that the Basulim are no longer there. Mukas Eitz, as it's called in the Gemara, or in the case where a doctor clinically, surgically removed the Basulim, and during the Bia Rishona there was no blood, then she's not treated as a Niddah. Ordinarily, what is the halacha, as we will see inside, that first time, even if there's no Bia, even if there's no Dam, it was a complete Bia, they stay away for 11 days. But there's no Dam. No, it could be that Dam was covered up by the Zera, she didn't notice it, she didn't see it. And even if there's no Dam at all, loy plug, we're not mechalek. First time around, if she was a Basula, they just have to stay apart. But if they were somehow removed before, even though some poskim are machmer, I think the vast majority are mekel. That as long as she sees no blood, the Basulim are not there from before. Like by Grushan Almana. I mean, she's not, a Grushan Almana don't have Basulim. Even though she's getting remarried. It's the first time around with her new husband. She's not gonna be a Niddah. There's no more Basulim. They're gone. Right? So same thing. If they're gone, they're gone. And that's how we follow. That's the halacha that we follow. However, it does become a little complicated many times, and I don't know how many times because I haven't done a study of statistics about it, but I do hear that it happens, that sometimes the chassan doesn't do the job completely. In halachic terminology, it's called he'ara. In other words, penetration or insertion. How much went in, how much did not go in? If not too much went in, well, that's why it's not broken. Because it could be difficult. It could be hard. And that could happen that he didn't do almost anything. So that's where there's different opinions as to how to treat this matter. So the Ramah, as we're going to see inside, says that the meaning is to be mekel im lo gomar biosoi. Maybe what we'll do is read it inside and then I'll just follow up with the explanation.
How is he going to know?
Yeah. So maybe we'll read it inside and then we'll get into that. Yeah. All right. So Machaber says in Sif Aleph, Akoines es a besula. Gets married. The man gets married to a young girl who's a virgin. Boyel be'ilas mitzvah. He performs the first bia, be'ilas mitzvah. Gomer bi'osoi ufoirish miyad. He completes his bia. In other words, he can complete it. He can do everything he needs to finish, and then he's porish miyad, and then he can no longer be on her bed. Afilu hiktano. The Mechaber says even if she's a little girl, sheloi gia zmano lidois. Her time has not come. She's not even 12 years old, which today is not really relevant, but we still need to know the halacha. Even though it's a ktana veloroso and she never saw blood yet, but filu batka, even if she checked herself later velomot sodam, still the halacha is like plug, we're not mechalek, tmeya, shema, and here comes the explanation for even if she didn't see blood, and she's not expecting blood, shema also, tipas dam kechardo, maybe there was just a little bit of blood, the size of a chardal seed, a mustard seed, v'chipau shichvat zera, and it was covered up by the shichvat zera, by this zera. Alright. That's the Mechaber so far. Before going on with the Mechaber, it comes along the Ramah and brings down the Shittas that the Yesh Makilim, Im Lo Ra Sadam, there are opinions that are lenient if she didn't see any blood at all. We know that there is such a halacha. We saw it from them, from the Rambam, and how he also is mechalek between if she's a boigeres or if she's a ktana. Here, this is following Amanda Omar that holds that if there's no blood, then there's no blood. When are we going to be machmir? When was the whole halacha said that we treated her as a niddah? That's at least if there's blood. But if there's no blood at all, there's some more mekel. This comes along the Ramon says, and what do we hold? No hagule hakelim lo gomar biyo rak he'ara bo. The custom is to only be lenient if he did not complete the bia. The chassan didn't do the job completely, he just a little bit, but it didn't go in all the way. And of course, lo ra sadam, she did not see any blood. Avalim ba leo bio mamish, but if it was a complete bia, tzorich lifrosh mimeno af al pi shelo ra sadam. Tur b'shoyis b'shem poisim. That's the halacha. He has to separate himself from her even if she didn't see any blood. Then he adds something very interesting. it doesn't seem to fit, but it does fit. A Bal Nefesh, one who's really concerned about doing things properly 100%, Yochush le'atzmo shelo lischuk betinoikos, he should be wary of not playing around with little girls. Now, what does that mean? Again, we don't have really this kind of a situation where there's little girls getting married. But if that's what happened, it could be that the chassan will not want to complete the biyah. And this way he figures she won't be a Niddah, and he'll be able to continue a few times like that. He says that's not right. To do it, nefesh yochush latzmo, not to do this kind of things. Okay, that's the Ramah so far. So when are we makel? There was ha'ara, there was some penetration, but not a complete, and he can somewhat feel that. It didn't go, couldn't go, blocked. Just somehow he can feel it more than her. And he explains this to the rabbi, of course, and he explains what happened. And there's no dam. Then that's okay. Then she doesn't have to conduct herself like a Niddah. What is exactly happening? What some Achronim explain it like this. The pois can bring down that it's quite possible that when there's not a complete penetration, it's just a little bit, the besulim will not come off. With the ha'ara by itself, ha'ara greda, they explain, the besulim could still be intact. But there are quite a few poskim that require of her to check herself. Check the sheet, check herself. Because even though it wasn't complete, it could still be that it's gone. Because it's very hard to know how much was done. How much went inside. And because of that, it is advisable for her to always do a check. And not just look around, oh, I don't see anything. No, she would actually need to check herself. But, let's assume that he did not do everything completely. What would happen therefore the next time around? Well, it could be the next time and the time after that, as long as they're consecutive, and she feels pain, it could be she'll see blood. Then that dam will be dam besulim. In other words, if we're saying that right now it could be it didn't do anything, if we're treating the first time as though nothing happened, then it's quite possible that the next time that she does see dam, and especially if she has pain, as long as it's consecutive, it could be once, twice, or whatever, that they're all associated with dam besulim. In other words, we treat it as a halacha of dam besulim, which is 4 plus 7. This is in some ways helpful because it's not dam machmas tashmish necessarily. That would be a worst case scenario. I mean, that would be much more serious. We don't want it to be dam machmas tashmish. Remember, we talked about that a long time ago, that it could possibly be still dam besulim. When? With a young girl at the very beginning, right after her marriage. Not 5 years later. 5 years later, if she's seeing dam in tashmish, I mean, there's something going on here. Check it out. But initially, it is possible, especially when the first time was only, it was a little bit. Oh, so it didn't break. There was no dam the first time. Because if there was dam the first time, then the other times are probably not dam besulim. So if there was just a partial, and it was not a complete biyah, and she feels pain, it is very possible that she's still going to see dam, and that dam will be considered dam besulim. If it was biyah gemura, if the first time was a complete biyah, and she did not see any blood, but it was a biyah gemura, then all the biyahs that come after that, if she sees blood, that's not dam besulim. If the first time was a biyah gemura, the first time was a biyah gemura, even though she didn't see blood. So what? A lot of girls don't see blood. So anyway, there's always that possibility that in the first few times, especially if there was not a complete biyah, that the first few times that she's actually seeing dam besulim, but she has to feel that there's still pain there, because that would be more of an indicator that that's what it is. All right, so we're going to continue with the mechaber. So this kala, after seeing or not seeing dam besulim, if everything was done normal and completed, she has to have hefsek tahara, which means she has to make sure she's clean. The tibda kol shiva, and check herself for the entire 7 clean days. However, where is she different than a regular woman, Niddah? She does not start counting the 7 days until the 5th day after she had last relationship. So what does it mean on the 5th day? It means that she counts 4 days before she counts 7 clean days. The Chava says you don't start counting the 7 until her 5th day from her Shemusha. Later on, we will see the difference between Ashkenazim and some Sephardim, that by a regular woman, the Ashkenazim say she waits 5 days before she begins to count 7 days. So that's one of the main differences between a Kala and a regular Niddah woman. A Kala only waits 4 plus 7. A regular woman, Ashkenaz woman, waits 5 plus 7. Sephardic women wait 4 plus 7 all the time, except for some who are machmir like the Ashkenazim. Now, it usually happens, depending on the age of the woman, that she will see during her period blood for 4 or 5 days anyway. So the 7 days, regardless, are only going to start after she stops seeing blood, which by a woman who gave birth, which is the next Siman, can take a little while. She sees blood for a while after birth, childbirth, before she can be completely clean. They have to be completely clean those 7 days. So here by Kala, she starts counting Yom Chamishi L'Shimusha. We're going to soon see the big long siman about Archakas, what husband and wife cannot do during the time she's a Niddah. So during this time of a Kala, she's a Niddah after Dam Besulim, after the first Bia, there's all the dini of Niddah as far as Archakas are concerned. There's only one main difference. In Niddah Gemura Asulo Lishon al Mitosa, in Niddah Gemura, a husband cannot sleep on her bed, even though she's not around. She's not sitting on her bed. Bezu, this one, as long as she got up from the bed, he can sit down on her bed. Even on the sheet, the bed sheet, where the blood is on.
Because there's no question of tumah,
yeah? Yeah, there were more mako. There's a few differences, very minute differences between a Kala, that is treated like a Niddah, and a real Niddah. And this is one of them that he brings in.
It's interesting because very often we find that the Halachot, the Dafka, try to avoid making differences and say more true.
That's very true.
And everything is...
Very true. Very good point, yeah.
Here they're Dafka introducing
Here,
minute differences.
It's interesting, interesting. In other words, to show that there's a little bit of a difference. And it shows some things that are not that much of a problem. Okay. Yeah, but we saw the other difference, that it's 4 plus 7 and not 5 plus 7. Now, why is it here 4 plus 7 and not the regular halacha? The regular halacha of why we wait the chalal, 5 plus 7, let's say a woman doesn't see that much blood. Let's say she saw blood for 2 days. She still has to wait, we said 5, and then begin shiving again. What's the reason for that? That's explained in Siman Kuf Tzadik Vov. There's something called, I'll just say it briefly, Plitat Shichvat Zera. A woman, after she had relations with her husband, it could be that within a couple of days, whatever went inside of her may come out. No, this is not Taaruvot, it's Kabbalah Kachbolta. So, but, I guess you could say that. I mean, technically that's what's happening. And Shichvat Zera is Metama, the woman. It therefore undoes one of her clean days. The difference
comes out
once it comes out, yeah.
So as long as it's within her, not. But
once it comes out, but it has to only be if it came out during the first 3 days. Because if it's during the first 3 days, the semen is viable. Viable means a life can be formed. It's not nisrach. Mm-hmm. After 3 days, shichvat zera nisrach. It's no longer, I guess, viable. It can't do anything with it. It loses its potency. And therefore it's not mitame after that. So we're only concerned if it came out within 3 days after. Okay. What happens if it did come out? It would render her in some ways unclean, but just for that day. What's the difference between that and real blood? Real blood means that she has to start over all the way from the beginning if she saw blood. Where Shichvat Zera means that she lost 1 day of account, but she can make it up for it. That's just the difference between... No, everybody holds by that.
So it's 5 days for all of them?
No, 4. So I'm going to explain why it's 4 and why, according to Ashkenazim or others, it's 5.
I thought you were explaining why the 5.
No, it was why wouldn't it apply? I'm going to explain why it doesn't apply here by Kala. Because the real difference is really in Siman Kuf Tzadik Vov. That's where the halacha is brought down, so I wasn't going to get too much into it. But briefly, it has to do with what I just said. Poletet Shichvat Zera, because it may happen to her, so In other words, if she waits 4 days, in other words, if you don't include the first day, she waits 4 days, then she can start counting her 7 days.
In other words, whatever comes out on the 4th day is not going to make her tama anymore because...
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
After 3 days,
so why wait 5? So what's the difference? Well, why 5? Because maybe she had relations bein hashmashas on one day. She didn't know which day it was, and she forgot that it was the day. It
didn't look on at the watch.
He didn't look at the watch. Yeah, it could have been. It was between the day and the night. So technically, it was really already the night. So that's where the chumrah of 5 instead of 4 comes in. Comes along the Maral in Prague I saw here, and he says that that's the reason why here we're not machmir with the 5. We're not machmir to be choishesh that maybe it was bein hashmashas. Ad kedei kach with a kala we don't do it. With a regular woman we are choishesh. Here we're not choishesh.
Because we will know because when the chazan was.
No, we weren't going to be machmir so much. That's all he says. To be also choishesh for bein hashmashas.
Because we would know when they were together.
That too. You're right.
It is a practical thing.
It may be more practical. It may actually be.
So when they're intimate during the chassan, they need to look at the watch?
No, usually it's at night anyway.
It could be at night after the.
So, but regular husband and wife, which is not like he's trying to explain here. It's not the first event, which is the wedding night. It's not so easy sometimes to figure out when was it. But with the chassan kala, it may be easier. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, the main idea expressed over there in the Maral is that this is a Rabbanan. And the Rabbanan, they were mekel, that she doesn't have to be choishish, that maybe this happened, during that time in Hashmashos. There are some additional details here that apply by chassan and kala. I don't think it's that important, but if you want to know, I'll just add it here. If you know that a woman who's a Niddah, we did explain that if this happens during the time that they're together, he has to be careful to wait until the aver is not hard, not rigid, before his poirish, so that there should not be any hana on the coming out, because there is some degree of hana coming out like there is coming in. So in a Niddah, if it happens that a woman becomes a Niddah, chas v'shalom, during that time, in the middle of the Yore Deah, then, not talking about kala right now, in general, then he has to wait. Chassan, he doesn't have to wait. In other words, what we said before that he's poirish, as soon as he's done, we mean as soon as he's done. Whether it's hard or not, whether the aver is kosher or not, we're not makbid here, because he's in his full right to be with her. She's not a real Niddah. So it's not an issue that he's coming out, when he's coming out, however he is. He just could come out, But obviously the chassan should do his best to make sure that the bia is as complete as possible for a variety of reasons. I mean, a lot of people do not realize, but there's always a chashash of zera levatala too. You do want to be careful with that point too. I mean, besides all the other halachas that we covered here, there's always that nekuda that I'm surprised actually nobody really mentioned it over here. One should be prepared. I mean, one should be, on the lookout. One should try to be as careful as possible that he does not leave too early, because there's still tipin, there's still drops, and that's zera levatah. And this is brought down. This is just, I don't know why it's not brought down here, but it is mentioned that for that reason alone, they should be careful that it goes in all the way, that it stays put until he's sure that everything is done with. And then, of course, he can be poirish. Poirish miyad, meaning that after he's done, he has to be poirish and go to his own bed. But until then, of course, he's allowed to be. There's no time limit on that. It's just that what could also happen is that he slipped off. It's brought down believe it or not, this scenario is brought down in the Chronim too. What happens if he in and out? He slipped off. Could he go back? Does he have a second try? And that's not a simple matter. It's like a one-time chance and that's it. Either you do it right or not. However, it could very possibly be that the first time around, the first bia, the bila's mitzvah, was not done complete. It just, no matter how hard he tried, it just didn't go. And that, sometimes they just know it. It's just like nothing really happened. I didn't feel anything. It was hard. Then, of course, even though he was poirish as soon as he was poirish as soon as he's done, at least he may be able to continue to try a second time without having to wait the 11 days. And that was what the Ramone was telling us here. That we can be mekel in that scenario, but this is as long as there was no blood. So for something like that, of course, he should definitely consult with a Rav that is familiar with these halachas, whether it was a complete beer or not. But if there was blood, then regardless of what he feels or what she feels, it's dam besulim, and you treat it as such. Only question is if there was no dam and he feels it just didn't happen all the way, then one can be mekel, but that's only in consultation with the Rav. Okay, stop here and continue with the Shem next week.